Hey, let's start the video off. Starting it off sitting on the floor by my engine, of course, as always. Seems like I'm spending way too much time with this damn thing. I made a colossal mistake when I added grease to my PTFE packing, which is Teflon packing. And I greased it up a lot. But the bottom line is that grease seems to be preventing any water from coming out along the packing. Ergo, you get no leak off, and if you get no leak off, you get nothing to carry the heat away, and then you just get basically friction-based heat. And that, yeah, I'm still a couple weeks away from leaving, so I've got time to screw with it a little bit more. I'm not desperate, so I'm going to replace the packing while the engine is installed. And that's going to be somewhat difficult because the packing gland is way down there. Okay, this is not comfortable. I'm just getting too old for this shit. And I'm younger than a lot of folks out here. Okay, we are going to bust loose the jam nut and send it this direction on the shaft to get it out of the way, all the way to the back of the threads. Then we're going to loosen the packing gland, which is going to introduce a lot of water, and send it this way toward me, and it's going to leak. Sometimes I can get it just by, and I did. Okay, so it's not. There goes the water. See, and we knew we were going to get leakage. We knew this. Okay, bust it loose now. Okay, and that's as bad as the leak should be. I've got to start digging out packing. I can't get any of it out. I can't see anything I'm doing except what you see in the. But I got one ring coming out. Here's one ring. This could be hard to get all three before I flood my boat. You can see it or you can manipulate it. You can't seem to do both at once. There's one. Now I gotta get this second. I got one ring out. I got two more to go. So this is how I do it. You wrap it around the shaft and you get a good cut on it. So you can't mistake it. I'm trying to get this one at least started in. I always start with just my fingertips. And then remembering approximately where the ends are, I just push in a bit, turn it, push it, turn it, push it, turn it. Number 3. I'm trying my best to alternate the gaps, but okay, the sound of no more leakage. Okay, well, a little bit. Okay. All right. No, that sucked. Okay, so that was a 1-hour whirlwind of activity, and I have this habit of rubbing my hair with my hands. They're covered with this bearing grease, so. 4 rings removed. I put 3 rings in. Maybe 4 was too many. I don't know. Let's clean up. I just came back from an inspection of the marina, making sure the other docks are maintaining the standard of this dock. And none of us are, but I've been looking at Topside at the new sunshade I got. So you saw in the last couple of years, my old mainsail with the CSY 37 still written on it was in service as my sunshade, and that worked pretty good. I mean, it was basically a pretty good fit and all that, but the fabric had been just getting so old and essentially brittle, you know, from being out in the sun for 46 years. So it was done. So since I was here in town, and Jessica's team does like the best job ever at making fabric things for a really good competitive price, I asked her if she could get something done, and so you see it's multicolored. And I told her, yeah, whatever fabric you have, let's not order anything special. So anyway, Mom focused on that in a couple of weeks that air conditioner is coming down and the sunshade's coming down, and the question is, where the hell am I going? That said, I'll remind you that I'm Russ. This is Sailing Vessel Tautog, and we're looking at the grand plan again. I've got the living room here and my chart table ready to roll. I've been doing a lot of work on the 2 chart plotters. I've got 2 tablets again. The loading on the software is pretty much identical. I've been doing a lot of testing. The diesel engine, I think, is good. The shaft packing is perfect. When it's off, it doesn't leak, and when it is running, I'm getting about 30 drips a minute, which is perfect for me. Keeps it nice and cool. And I had a coolant leak, which I had to resolve yesterday. I think I've got that done. So I think we are ready to go with the engine, and I'm going to need it as we look at the sailing plan. Let's take a quick look. I always start with the big flick. This is not the big flick. This is the big flick. Okay, so this is the Caribbean Sea, and it doesn't go all the way to the Western Caribbean. My current location is off the chart over here, which is why I have, you know, this chart. So we'll get to that bit in a minute. Basically, my high-level objective, what I'd really love to do, is cruise the Eastern Caribbean from the Virgin Islands, the Spanish Virgin Islands, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, then all the way down to the Lesser Antilles, or they call them the Windward Islands, whatever you like to call them. We'll discuss that in a bit. And then probably will take me every bit of a month, I'd say perhaps more, to get there, because if I have normal weather patterns, then I'm going to be beating against the wind most of the way. So looking at the chart plotter here on my tablet, and considering that I want to go generally from here and generally over to here to the Eastern Caribbean, you know, that's 1,800 statute miles, about 1,500 nautical miles. That's a long darn way, and it's generally against the wind and the current. We've discussed that before, and I think we all get that. So, but before we talk about the grand strategy going all the way across, you know, and how awesome of a trip that would be, you know, let's talk about the, you know, let's talk about step 1, which is just kind of clearing the immediate area. And I'm going to zoom in real quick down to the area and give you kind of the lay of the land. So my first 100 miles is getting to about this line here. If I can make it to that area there, I'll be pretty darn happy. If I could do that in the first day and a half. But even before I think about that, I need to get clear of the sandbar in Livingston. You can't just motor out of here. Okay, so the first bit is actually quite easy. You go, turn on the motor, cast off the lines, and just chug on the motor all the way. The water in this lake is between 10 and 20 feet deep most of the way. And most people will come to this area and stop in Cayo Quemado. Is a pretty decent anchorage. I like to go inside the middle lake and just hang there for a couple of days. You know, that's easy enough to do, assuming my engine works. And the next day or a day or two after, I would head down the river, and the total trip from Rio Dulce to here is about 17 miles total. And then you have to clear out of customs, you know, with a roll, and then get out of here. Again, so the first part, getting down here, is actually just driving the boat, generally under motor power. It'd be very, very unlikely to have winds favorable for heading northeast. That'd be very unlikely. And clearing out of the country here in Livingston, that's very easy as well, as long as I coordinate ahead of time with Raul, and he'll have my paperwork ready, and all I really need to do is pay the penalty for overstaying my visa. Getting across the sandbar, which is right about here, or the mud bar, whatever you like to just call it, is a bit more problematic. I think I mentioned before, this looks like it's got a nicely marked channel, but that's not really true. None of these navigation aids physically exist. The track for leaving here is generally right along the greens, just outside the greens. That's where you go to get clear. But at the very end, it is shallow, and I'll hit the bottom. So if you know your astronomy, you know that the moon rotates around the Earth once a day generally. You know, not exactly 24 hours, but close enough for our purposes. And as the moon rotates around the Earth, it attracts the water, and you get the high tide in 2 different places on the planet. And it moves a little bit every day. And so you think about that in the cycle of the moon, and you know that the tide advances about an hour a day, or I should say retards really. If it's high tide today at 8 o'clock, tomorrow it'll be high tide at 9 o'clock. And that's pretty much rhythmic. So for the lunar tidal predictions, you can look that up, and I can predict right now. I know that when the windows are. So every 2 weeks I'll get my high tides in the morning. Why in the morning? Well, I want to leave as early as possible in the daytime. You know, at 7 o'clock in the morning would be perfect for me, you know, because that's usually when the weather is calm. And sometimes we even have an offshore wind blowing me a little bit out, which would help me. By the middle of the day, almost every day, we have it right this minute as I'm speaking, it's about 3 p.m. By the time you get to about 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, the wind has started to come back this way. And it builds up with a lot of robustitude. So by 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, the wind coming this way is ripping. And that's not good for a slow sailboat with a little motor that's trying to go this way. So that's really what it's about, guys. I need my high tide in the morning because that's when I expect to have a calm. So even if I wanted to get up into Belize, I still generally have to motor to Tres Puntas, and ideally I would go a little bit further so that I can just do a beam reach straight north up into the Placencia area, you know, when the wind kicks up. So that's really my strategy, is to get to Tres Puntas, and when it's calm, and preferably just motor and get to the point where I put my red dot. That's kind of my marker that I'll steer for, because once I get here, if the wind kicks up, not a problem, because then I'll be in a position where I can sail the boat, and I will show you the reef. I can't go here. I can't go here. That's the reef, and I will crash and die if I go there. So I can sail this way a bit, and I can tack my way out. So as long as I get to this region by midday, I can make it. So I'm hoping to be sailing by the time I get to this point, and probably tacking my way out. If I had continued calm conditions, I'd probably motor a wee bit more until the wind turned. That's probably what I would do. Some people motor all the way to Utila, I can tell you that. That's what some people do. They just motor the whole damn thing. But once you get clear of that, you know, what's the basic strategy? Well, I would say it's about that water and the wind. But first, let's talk about the water movement. We know that the water moves this way in the Caribbean Sea, and in this area, the water has an eddy. The current turns around like that. So in this area here, the current is expected to generally be coming down and then going to the east, and you'd think, wow, that's awesome. But remember that if the water is moving this way with any appreciable velocity, like half a knot or a knot, and the wind is going this way, it is going to be really rough, and we would expect a lot of angry swell here where the bottom is changing. So it'd be probably better to get out into the deeper water, and that's what I intend to do. My operating area is going to be north of these islands and south of, you know, the 17th parallel. And the 17th parallel is somewhere in this ballpark. It's not shown on the chart here. But once I get clear into the open Caribbean, then I need to remember that once I get to a point like this, I'm going to be getting set pretty hard to the northwest. So my strategy, guys, is to generally stay in an operating area that's south of 17 degrees north and just tack my way across, trying to advance to the east. once I get to this region, this is a big bank and it's quite shallow. I wouldn't expect a lot of current there, but out here I'd expect the current to really be ripping because that's where it's deeper. And it just makes sense to me that all the water is trying to go northwest, and it's going to be, the water is going to follow the deep water paths. So I would expect that the current here is really strong. So either you get on the bank and get out of the current, or you get across it as quickly as possible. That's basically the strategy for me. And again, I'll point out that, you know, I'm a lucky guy for many reasons, and one of the reasons is that it really doesn't matter where I go. If I'm getting to this point and I'm having a great time and I'm having fun, then I'm going to head across and try to go up in this area and shift my operating area a little bit north to get out of that current. Then I'm going to continue to try to tack my way to the east. So, I guess by day 4, I'm expecting to have myself over here by the Swan Islands, somewhere in this area. I call it my operating area. It's kind of to the lower and to the left of the dividers, because I want to stay out of that current. If I can be meandering my way through here, I'd be very happy, because that puts me in a decision point. Yeah, I should put a shirt on. I do own shirts, by the way. Yeah, and the decision when I get to the Swan Islands area is really kind of a 3-option decision. I can continue the course. If I'm in good spirits, if I feel good, nothing's breaking, and I feel like, hell, I can beat against the wind a little bit more, do a few more days, get across that area where the current's really moving, and head up, maybe visit Jamaica. Get up to Montego Bay and check into the country and hang there maybe through the holidays. Hell, I don't know. I might do that. That sounds pretty attractive, actually, to me. Another option is, I could head on down to Panama. I have some friends down there, and I wouldn't be angry if I went to Panama. A little disappointed because it's going to be really, really hot there too, and I think I am ready for a little bit of a change. And the third option, which we haven't really talked too much about, is to follow the traditional path. And what's the traditional path? Well, we got to zoom out a bit to show you that. I would say is follow the wind and the current. So if the winds are going this way and the water is going this way, you know, if I got to here and it was just sucking and I was just saying, okay, this sucks, beating into the winds, getting slammed every day, maybe I'm not able to sleep, I could just turn and hang a left and just ride that current north, and it'll go up into the Gulf of Mexico. I'll get you a map of the current location of the current, because it changes every year. But in general, the Gulf Stream current goes up here somewhere and comes down the side of Florida, passes around Florida, and then goes up north, and it goes all the way to Newfoundland and continues to the UK. And what I could do is just follow that route. I could go north, come down along Florida, maybe do a pit stop in the Marathon, or maybe go up to Fort Pierce, but basically wrap around Florida. And if I needed a pit stop or to do some supply running, that would be the time to do it. Then I could leave this area of Florida or leave Marathon and head north and get to about this region. And from there, you head east across the Atlantic, you know, but not intending to go all the way across the Atlantic. If you look at the pilot charts, the winds in this region are generally going to be out of the northeast. And that, I can do some business with that. If I'm leaving this area, I can go out here and then slowly work my way on a heading similar to this. You know, steer about 120 until I got to longitude 65, which goes right about here. And they call it getting on I-65, and that's basically the sailing plan. And it is probably, yeah, and getting on I-65 is probably the most sensible thing to do. Honestly, there's not a lot of downsides, except that if you get a late season hurricane, that's probably where it's gonna go. You know, almost everybody watching this knows the paths that hurricanes take, and it's generally they come east, or they come from the east, from Africa, and then they slowly curl to the north, and almost every hurricane goes past the northern Caribbean or the Bahamas and Puerto Rico, and so that would be the only real downside to my, for me going that way. And I just don't know yet, guys, which way I'm going to go with it. That's not me being indecisive. I think it's me actually advancing with my overall outlook on life, and how I'm trying to be less and less fixated with a certain plan and a certain schedule and learning how to do what they say, you know, where the wind takes me. And that is probably where the wind and the currents are going to want to take me. So maybe that's what I'll end up doing. But probably not until I try to bash against the wind. I just want to give that a go and see how it goes. And I'm going to probably have my Iridium Go turned on. I'll have my Starlink service ready to go. So I'll be able to check in and keep, you know, folks updated. So, but my overall goal is to, you know, live a carefree life of being a sailor and going where the wind takes me and not getting too hung up on where I go. So my destination in the Eastern Caribbean, I don't know. I've prepared to enter about 15 different ports in the Eastern Caribbean, everywhere from Jamaica to Puerto Rico to, you know, the Puerto Rican Virgin Islands, and the U.S. Virgin Islands and the British Virgin Islands and Saint Martin, and Anguilla, and, you know, and the French Islands. So I've already reviewed on the chart plotter, and I've already reviewed the cruising guides, and I know exactly where I'm going to anchor if I made it to any of those islands. So I just don't know where I'm going to get to first, and I really just don't care, because once a person gets to the Eastern Caribbean, assuming hurricane season is over, and it will be by then it's not as problematic to move north and south along that line of islands, because they are arranged nicely to be roughly beamed to the trade winds, and there's not a whole lot of beating to do against the wind. I think that's as far as I'm going to cover it today, guys. I'm always grateful to have you guys out there as friends, and I'm very grateful to have an engine running right now that I think I'm going to test it again tomorrow morning when I get past my breakfast, and I think we're ready, man. So everybody out there, I appreciate it. Look forward to your comments. Take care, man. Bye-bye.